The venture has an elevated offer, Delta has a sale going on, and Hyatt announced their annual category changes. This and more in today's roundup. Big favor, hit the like button to help with the algorithm. If you know someone that might benefit from this, then share this with them. Starting with the Capital One venture, this is a great choice whether you're new to travel or you just want more miles. There's two parts of this. The first one is $250 to use on Capital One travel in your first cardholder year, and you get this for getting approved. The second part is 75,000 bonus miles after spending 4,000 on purchases in the first 3 months. Capital One miles are pretty flexible. For normal travel, you're getting 1 cent per mile, so 75,000 times 1 cent is $7.50 in value. This could either be bookings on Capital One travel or to cover travel charges made with your card. 1,000 value divided by 4,000 spend is 25% return on spend. If you're being pedantic, since the credit isn't reliant on spend, $7.50 divided by 4,000 is still 18.75% return on spend. Technically, that's the baseline travel value, but you can get even more value. As of February 2025, Capital One has more than 15 transfer partners. The rates do differ by partner, and I wouldn't focus on the number of miles, but on the value you get. Not all the partners are made equal. For the most part, I'd focus on Aeroplan, Life Miles, Flying Blue, maybe Qantas, Singapore, and Virgin Red. The reason why I really like transferring out to partners is that it democratizes access to first and business class experiences for normal people. Reminder here, we're transferring from the bank miles to airline miles. For example, turning your Capital One miles into Singapore miles. The idea being that you're using those miles to book flights using that airline's award chart. So for example, let's say we want to fly from North America to Asia. So even though this is on Singapore metal, you can actually fly to places like Tokyo. In this case, LAX to Tokyo in business class is 103.5k miles. Here's SFO to Singapore for about the same price. Depending on the flight you want, the number of seats and also miles needed might also be different. If you want to do first class to Singapore, New York to Frankfurt is a sweet spot. It definitely is a bit tougher, but if you're willing to do last minute, you're looking at 97,000 miles for first class and 81,000 for business. Another great option that we covered a ton is ANA business class. There are arguably better first classes, but for business, this one takes the cake and has the best hard products. We can do this by transferring from Capital One miles to Virgin Atlantic and then redeeming with their partner, ANA. So if you go to Virgin's site, you can see that they're partnered with ANA and they have their own award chart. Once you find availability, you call Virgin to book and you're good to go. In this case, business class from the West Coast is 52.5k miles and first is 72.5k. From the East Coast, it's a bit more expensive, 60k and 85k respectively. For the past year, since we have gone to Japan a ton, this has been one of our go-to options. We're not only doing this one, but it has been part of one of the legs for the last 3 Japan trips. The card does have a $95 annual fee. In year 1 though, it makes sense. Year 2, you can reevaluate. Also a reminder that Capital One treats the Venture and Venture X as separate products. This means that you can get both, and it might be a good way to add an extra 75k miles. On that note, if you want to learn about this card or pretty much any other card out there and you want to support the channel, we do have links on the website, asksebi.com, and also down below in the description box. Make sure the links are competitive, that they make sense for you, but otherwise it is a huge way to support the channel, so thank you in advance. Moving to 2 fast deals, Delta has a sale until February 27, 2025, so today. Prices for fares are round trip, and if you have a card with them, then it's an additional 15% off. Destinations include Auckland, Brisbane, Tahiti, Sydney, and Taipei. So for example, if Bora Bora is on your list, then 50k miles for basic economy round trip is pretty solid. I probably wouldn't go now though because it is wet season, but it is an option. Even if you are flying from the East Coast, some of these prices are pretty solid. So for example, New York to Auckland is 54k for basic economy and 74k for main cabin. I'd probably splurge for main cabin there given the flight distance, but depends on you. From the West Coast, it's a bit cheaper, 44k and 64k. Taipei is another great option, and from Seattle, you're looking at 44k to 60k. Also note that origin cities are pretty broad and way beyond what I covered, but I just wanted to highlight some of the bigger ones. Of all these destinations though, I'd probably put Tahiti at the bottom. The ones I'd consider would be Brisbane if you like milder temperatures, and same with Sydney, which is pretty good for shoulder season. Same thing with Auckland where it's shoulder season and it's less busy. On the top of my list would be Taipei. Spring's a pretty good time to go, and you can also see cherry blossoms. Reminder that for a lot of places, like Taipei, summer is pretty brutal and not ideal unless you like sweating nonstop. Super fast one, but next up is Mumu. They're offering 8.1% APY on uninvested cash and up to 15 free stocks. You get 5 free stocks for depositing $100 and an extra 10 for depositing $1,000. Current offer ends March 31st, 2025. They also do have a lot of advanced features for traders and short-term investors. Reminder that Moomoo is a registered brokerage regulated by FINRA. They're also a direct member in good standing of SIPC. Worst case, you get free stocks for trying something. Best case, you like it. For the promotion, you do need to keep assets in the account for 60 days. Yeah, tons of time to test drive it. If you're interested, go to asksebi.com/moomoo or use the link down below. Last up, we have Hyatt's annual category changes. It's not the craziest or scariest of updates, but it is a little spooky and almost hilarious because it feels like it's targeting me. You'll get a pretty good idea once we get to the examples. As a starting point, Hyatt did do a full data dump of this, and you can look at this on their site. Since I like making spreadsheets, and that's kind of where my brain works, this is perfect. Reminder that you can still book at the old price until March 25th, 2025. So I'd strongly consider booking if these make sense and fit into your travel plans. March 25, 2025 is the book by date, but you can stay afterwards, maybe into even 2026, depending on the property. Reminder that Hyatt also has resorts, and these go from category A, B, and all the way down to F. For these, I met them by price, based off the standard categories and their price. So even though for resorts, there's an F, which is kind of a category 9, 9 doesn't exist for the normal one, we're still using 9 as a comparison point. In total, we saw 151 hotels change places. The net change is 85 going up. So 118 went up and 33 went down. Everything only moved by one category, so no big changes this year, which is nice. For these hotels, the total increase was 369k points. If we divide it by 151 hotels, about 2,500 point increase per hotel. Average increase being about 29%. So I know that sounds pretty bad, but if you look at the whole picture, it's pretty reasonable. Hyatt has over 1,350 hotels, and we're only seeing changes with 11.2% of them. That means that 1,200 of the hotels are not seeing any changes. So if you look at it that way across all the hotels, change is closer to about 3%, which does track of inflation pretty well and again seems at least somewhat fair. Compare this to Marriott, where we saw increases to the cap across entire categories rather than just individual hotels. So instead of it being 10% of the hotels, it's pretty much all of them. On the low end, the increase was about 12%, in the middle about 5%, on the top end about 15%, and with specific callouts to kind of a category 9A with St. Regis and Ritz-Carlton Maldives, which is their top band, so that's about 20% up. But yeah, overall, Marriott's changes are comparably worse to the point that I'd want to turn the TV off. Okay, back to Hyatt, and with all this information, I think there's 4 key areas. Number 1 are hotels that went from category 4 to category 5. Next are ones that went from 5 to 4, Japan as a whole, and then premium options. The reason why we care about hotels going to 4 to 5 is that there are cards out there that give you certificates. These certificates can be used at category 1 to 4 hotels. 11 hotels went from 4 to 5. This includes some of my favorites like Hyatt Regency TST, Hyatt House Tokyo Shibuya, Hyatt Regency Tokyo, and also Hyatt Regency Vancouver. Team Saoche being one of our go-to options when visiting family in Hong Kong since it is super convenient and centrally located. A bit outdated to me, but does the job, especially before when we could find it for 12k points. Crazy enough, we literally got back from Hyatt House Shibuya less than a month ago, and it's one of our favorite new hotels in terms of vibe and location. Demand is super high though, so definitely understand why they bumped it up. Overhearing some conversations, demand is so high and people are willing to pay the cash price that they only have to release about 5 to 10 rooms for points availability. So there's enough cash demand that they don't have to care about points. Hyatt Regency Tokyo was their go-to landing hotel because there's a shuttle that's super convenient, and it was also generally easy to find a room. I am a bit surprised by this increase though, because it is a bit out of the way unless you want to walk 10 to 15 minutes. I'll touch on these a bit more in the Japan section. The opposite of this are going to be ones that went from 5 to 4, making it now eligible for the category 1 to 4 certificates. I've heard good things about Dream South Beach as well as Park Hyatt Doha, and Jeju is on the list, so maybe that one. At the same time, the cash price for a lot of these seem pretty low, so might be easier to pay out of pocket. I do think supply and demand plays a pretty large role in these changes, and that's why we're seeing Japan hit so hard. Japan was always popular, but it's kind of having its own moment with 47% increase in foreign visitors in 2024. We're pretty much at record highs across the board for everything. Higher demand and fixed supply means that hotels can and probably should charge more. It's actually getting to the point that Japanese locals are being priced out of hotels because of inflation rates and more people fighting for these spots. On our end, it's why points have been so valuable now because prices have been high. Taking a look at the changes, a lot of these are popular go-to points pits. Funny enough though, for some of these, it's still great value even with the increase. For example, Caption is going from 1 to 2, but it still makes sense. Average retail price is about $200 per night, so back then $5K was a steal, $8K still solid. 200 divided by 8,000 points is 2.5 cents per point, which is awesome. Feels like a no-brainer if you can find availability. I think Hyatt Shibuya House is worth it, even going up from 4 to 5. Pretty large room, good location, and washing machine mid-stay is great as a way to kind of reset. Prices can be 500 to 700, so 700 divided by 20K is 3.5 cents per point. Also, this is the base rate before considering the other taxes and fees that are pretty prominent with Japanese hotels. For our stay last month, it was 12K points per night. Hyatt Regency Tokyo is a bit of a weird one. So we have used category 1 to 4 certificates here, but we've also found it for 2 to 300 and just paid out of pocket. The math technically can still work, but it's more of a workation hotel than one that I'd recommend for new people. So it's great if you need a day or two in the middle of your vacation to do some work, to crank out a video, but other than that, if you are trying to be a tourist, it's not the best. Kind of the same boat with the Hyatt Regency Kyoto, so it's okay, but definitely feels more like a business hotel. If you can find it for cheap, I'd probably pay out of pocket. Obviously, feel free to use points if it's expensive and the math makes sense, but it just doesn't feel like that impressive of a hotel. And yeah, I just don't want people to waste their points. So it's fine, but it feels a bit soulless. Moving up on the list, we have some of the more pricey ones, like Toronto on Hills. Prices here do vary quite a bit, so about 500 to 700 per night. It is a pretty nice hotel and I like it and the amenities, but it's not necessarily the most conveniently located if you want to walk outside and have access to everything. If you don't mind taking a 10 or 20 minute subway ride at the bottom of the hotel, then that's fine. Given that the point prices are about the same, if I had to use points, I'd probably book this one over the 2 Hyatt Regencies. This one's definitely a lot more interesting and yeah, just feels worth your points. Another interesting one is going to be the Hyatt-centric Ginza. This is one of our favorite hotels and great location for shopping, and also super cool lobby with features and just friendly people. The rooms are also pretty big as well, which is nice. But yeah, probably the best Hyatt-centric we've ever been to. Literally the shops outside are Rolex and JLC. Mandy did do a full deep dive on this hotel on her channel if you are curious. The last batch for Japan are the ones that went from 7 to 8. And as Tokyo is pretty much the sister option to Hotel Toronto on Hills since it's in the same area. It definitely is a more elegant pick, especially if you can land a view of Tokyo Tower, and that's awesome. We personally liked it, but very much your mileage may vary from the other people I've ran into in the community who've also stayed here. So it is pretty luxurious, but some people interpret that as less friendly. Really good breakfast here though if you do have elite status, which is nice. I do have a full deep dive on this one on the Sebi Funk Travel channel in case you're curious. For both the Andaz and Hotel Toronto on Hills, you pretty much need to take a train to get to any of the major sites. If you do want to be in the heart of things, then maybe pick Ginza or Shibuya. Grand Hyatt Tokyo is going from 7 to 8, but that one doesn't really make sense to me, especially because you can sometimes find it for 300 to 400 a night. Generally for us, if it's sub 500 and ideally 300, 200 range, we don't mind paying out of pocket unless we're getting outsized value with points. So for example, the last time we stayed here, we booked through FHR for $337 and then taxes and fees was about $100, so 400 something. I'm probably going to make enemies, but I don't think the Grand Hyatt does enough to warrant that category other than the demand. It's a good hotel, but it should not cost as much as the Park Hyatt. The Park Hyatt though at 8 does make sense to me because they are doing a major renovation right now and it's their flagship hotel in Japan, and it's also famous for Lost in Translation. We haven't stayed there yet, but it is on our list. Okay, last batch are going to be the premium jumps, so ones that go from 7 to 8. 3 of these are already Japan ones that we talked about, so no need to cover that. One that's on my list is the Andaz Costa Rica, where a lot of people have said that it's their favorite Hyatt hotel. Retail price is about $950, $1,000, so 3 cents per point if you booked before the change, and afterwards closer to 2.5. Yeah, if any of you have been here, let me know if it's worth it and if it's cool. Another one that might make sense to book is the Grand Hyatt Kauai. So if you are interested, I'd probably lock in the price. It is a pretty beautiful property and good location, and I really like the lazy river and hot tubs and kind of everything else there. There are other nearby hotel options that are a bit cheaper, but to me, less good, but yeah, depends on you there. Mandy has a full deep dive on Mandy Roams, going through a whole trip from about half a year ago. With these 2 channels, we are trying to showcase different options for points and help you figure out whether it makes sense to redeem for certain hotels or flights. Overall, I'd argue that the changes aren't too bad and track with inflation. The one that does hurt a bit is Japan, since it is on a lot of people's list, but it also kind of makes sense given the crazy demand. A few bank programs do transfer over to Hyatt, and even with these changes, I think it is still one of the best options. Again, if you want to learn about cards, whether the Capital One Venture or cards that transfer over to Hyatt, and you want to support the channel, we have links on the website, asksimon.com, and down below in the description box. If you made it to this point, leave a cherry blossom emoji or pink flower emoji in the comments down below, and I'll try to heart it and also respond. Kind of funny that it works at Taiwan, Japan, and also Hawaii. 3 questions. Number 1, what would you do with 75k Capital One Venture miles? Number 2, are you booking any of the Delta flights via their sale? And number 3, which Hyatt hotels are you booking to lock in the price? Let me know and everyone else know in the comments down below. Big favor, hit the like button, subscribe, otherwise I hope you liked it. See you next time.